Yeah, welcome to this video covering Magnus Carlsen's games at the second day of the Rapid World Championships in Astana, Kazakhstan. Magnus started with 4.5 out of 5 yesterday on Friday, the first day of the tournament, and today, the second day, also 5 games. And this video will feature 4 of these games because one video already done by me featured the game that he won against Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. I did a sort of live video on this, 50 minutes, and really recommend this one for a great endgame. Okay, so let's get going here. The 6th round of the tournament, he played Alexei Dreyev, Dreyev playing black, Carlsen white, and Magnus opened e4. Dreyev went for the Caro-Kann, which he often plays. He sort of mixes it between the Caro-Kann if he wants to, stay solid, and the Sicilian if he wants to go for a win. So against Carlsen here, he went for the safe path. Yeah, Carlsen going here for the 2 knights variation, an old favorite of Bobby Fischer's. I think this variation never had a very fearsome reputation for black, but it fits in with Carlsen's style of choosing not so well trodden path, so to say. So bishop g4, which is normal, h3, and now e6. And here Magnus comes up with a slight surprise, I think. White usually in this kind of position plays a move like d3 or even g3, which is a normal kind of development in those kind of positions. But Carlsen here went d4, which is less common. Black now captured. Yeah, and queen takes e4. I think knight takes e4. Queen takes d4. It's very questionable if you have enough compensation there. White has some development, but it's a central pawn. So he went with queen e4. Yeah, knight f6, gaining a tempo, and queen to h4. Yeah, sort of the only square to cover the d4 pawn. And queen a5 now, which is interesting move. Black immediately tries to get some counterplay on this diagonal here, possibly with bishop b4, knight d5, stuff like this. And white plays bishop d3 and knight a6. Interesting. The idea to immediately grab this important bishop. And if white played castles now, if white would have played a move like a3 here, black still can do this, as there's a pin working. Now that I think of it, maybe this is something white could actually consider. Here, castle now. Black's queen doesn't have a square, and if black would take here, there's this cute move. Interesting. So maybe white could have considered to play a3, but okay, black is not forced to play a knight b4 immediately. Okay, let's look what happened. He castled and allowed this move. Rook d1 to cover d3. Makes sense, otherwise white's pawn structure would get destroyed. Cannot move the bishop, of course, because simply this pawn is hanging. So not much choice. Rook d1, bishop e7. Yeah, emphasizing that this queen is not in the greatest diagonal. White took care of that, and now black castled queenside. So also quickly giving this rook some use on d8. a3, white couldn't stand this any longer and clarified the position. h6. Yeah, well, what can white do? Taking is also not great. Black has play on d4, and this is quite a silly piece on c3. So Magnus played bishop d2, maybe intending at some point to move the knight. And black now queen f5. So let's take stock of this position. Yeah, white didn't get anything out of the opening. Black has a very solid position, perfect pawn structure, no weaknesses at all. And this is play on d4. And white, yeah, has a somewhat clumsy knight on c3. And all these pieces are not doing much. So this is obviously a success for black, this kind of position. But it's not like black has an advantage. He looks comfortable, but it's nothing special yet. So rook e1, bishop here to activate a bit, and knight e4. So we get this simplification now. One knight pair exchanged. But Carlsen didn't play queen e4, make it totally easy. He still wanted to try a bit here maybe, but queens get exchanged anyway. Yeah, and this is an endgame where even Magnus cannot do something. Yeah, black was sort of threatening c5, so this blocking move. And you see that black has nothing to fear here, as white doesn't have any meaningful pawn breaks. Black is very strong on this d5 point, so any ideas like this to open it up are pretty much unrealistic. And from a structure point of view, black has the better bishop here, as his pawns are on white squares. And if you look at the d2 bishop, white has quite a number of pawns on dark squares. So there's simply nothing to play for here from white's point of view. And we see that the position closes up further, and there's pretty much nothing happening in this game. Yeah, black is trying a bit here. He's certainly somewhat slightly better, but it's maybe nothing serious yet. Yeah, pretty much nothing going on here. So now black maybe intends to play rook d to a8 and to a2, and this could get ugly. Not quite sure why he didn't try that at least. Yeah, some maneuvering going on. I mean, black is also perfectly content with the draw. You need to look at the times also. They were both pretty down on time. So black chooses the easy moves. Okay, now g4. Interesting to get some activity for the rook. And now white gets his g4 pawn back. Of course, covering c3. Oops, c3. Don't want to give up that. And we have repetition of the position and game drawn now. So a pretty, dull game. Where Magnus is quite simplistic opening choice. Not quite sure what's happening here. Okay, I need to I hit the wrong button. Where white's very simplistic opening choice led to very dry position. Once this bishop on d3 is gone, there's simply nothing to play for. And they continued, but basically it was a draw all along. So a draw here. Second game of today, I need to check, I don't have it, was against Boris Gelfand. Magnus playing black, and Gelfand opened d4, and we got a Queen's Gambit declined. The classical opening that black can choose against d4. Super solid, and the kind of line you can learn and still play in 50 years. Okay, so very solid stuff. But now a slight surprise from Magnus. He played b6. The current main line here is knight b to d7, and this is a line which has been played from black's point of view by all leading top players of today: Kramnik, Anand, Aronian, everybody basically. Very solid, but a bit dull. Magnus went b6, which is usually a bit more fighting, but we see that here after c5, Gelfand decided to play a very safe move here, which nevertheless led to some advantage. He captured on c5. White also could have thought about moves like this here to keep a bit more tension in the position. Let's say takes, and then let's say rook here, trying to play an isolated pawn position. Not at all out of the question, this kind of continuation, but he decided to take c5, and after this we see that the pawn structure is almost completely symmetrical. So we've got those C and D lines open, very common position type in the Queen's Gambit, but there is some difference in the position of both sides. Black has his bishop on b7, which is a nice piece covering the diagonal, but this b6 move also involves some weakening here, and the issue also is, if you look at the development, white plays knight b5, white simply has got more pieces out. This b8 knight is still at home, and white already has a rook on the d-file, so white is certainly better here. The only question is if black can equalize this, sort of trade down enough stuff to get a draw, or if white will get something substantial here. So not a huge success opening wise for Magnus here. Needs to really defend. Knight d7 and knight d6, directly trying for something. Here white had some alternatives, of course. You could also go here, or often this kind of maneuver is also an idea to kick this bishop away. So multiple possibilities, but knight d6 is quite logical to take use of the development advantage. Black now went bishop d5. Alternative would be bishop c6, but I think he didn't like all these bishops in the c-file after rook c1. So bishop d5 was played, and now bishop b5. And this tries to use this this somewhat crowded piece configuration here in the center. But Magnus played this amazing move, knight h5. Very concrete way to approach the position. The amazing thing is, if you look at this, what else should black play? Let's say black would play a move like rook d8, just a normal move. What could white try then? It's still not easy. He didn't need to play knight h5, I think. Don't see a really great continuation here. White looks somewhat better, but it's not obvious how he should continue. this move maybe. Maybe here. And now if you take, you can just take with the rook and cover f7. Yeah, I mean knight h5 wasn't the only move, but a very, very concrete one. This is now hanging, but black is also threatening to take here and take on d6, so quite a tactical solution. White took, and black took here. And now knight to b5. If white would actually grab this knight, then bishop b6 would attack this pawn. White cannot. I can. He could play this theoretically. Well, rook d8. It's very good for black. But what I was getting to is this move. This is quite a funny line, leading to a completely wrecked white pawn structure. So there are some ways here for white to go wrong slightly. I mean, this rook endgame wasn't maybe so terrible, but knight b5 is better, I guess. Still, this knight is hanging, and what should black do? If he would, let's say, retreat the knight to g6, then there's this move. So not too attractive. He played rook d8, sort of asking the bishop, okay, where do you go now? And now white grabbed. Rook d7. We've got a funny position now with two knights against two bishops, but these knights are just very active and push these bishops around. Especially this bishop doesn't have a good square, so black attacks the e5 knight with f6, knight back to d3, no other square I guess, so white ensures that he will get one of those bishops, which happened now. And now we've transposed into an endgame where white is very slightly better maybe. Yeah, I guess so. White's structure is better, but black should be able to hold it. So rook d6, attacking these two, and black just went rook c8 because okay, this pawn is also hanging. So I'm sorry. If rook takes e6, black could take b2. So this isn't a great one. So white protected the b pawn by simply pushing it to b3. King f7 to use the king, and this is an important feature here. Black's king is just quicker in helping in the battle here. Yeah, covering e6, and now white uses the knight. King e7, rook a6, and rook c7. So white is putting some pressure on these pawns, and black tries to get rid of the weaknesses by pushing. Knight c5. Yeah, and now it is a very concrete position. e6 and b7 attacked. So black moved the rook, and now white grabbed the pawn here. So at first sight you think, okay, white has succeeded here, winning a pawn, but now very nice move, bishop c8, and this shows that this knight is nicely positioned, but once it is moving, the c4 pawn is lost. Gerfond played knight a4 here, just to show what happens if white plays a sort of zero move, let's say here. Then black would go to c6 and to grab this pawn, and here white already needs to be a little bit needs to be careful a bit here, because potentially this bishop can be very strong, b7 d5, and this knight doesn't have an outpost. It's still a draw, sure, but nothing white should be aiming for. So he went knight a4, and now rook b4. This may be not so accurate, but okay, it's a rapid game. Black had a minute and so on. Here Magnus also could have played rook a6, and this is maybe the clearest way to secure a draw. White needs to take here, and then this move, attacking the pawn, and this knight is just a bit of a silly piece here. Let's say white protects the pawn, then black can just attack here and regain his pawn, and it's a dead draw. So this would have drawn immediately. He went rook to b4, knight c3, and now you see that this knight d5 was threatened. So black needed to go to f8, move the king, and now there's a double attack here. So after the smoke clears here, white ends up with a rook endgame, a pawn up. The only black hope here is to get counterplay on the second rank. So let's see, he first grabbed this pawn, g3, rook f5, and rook b1. Good move to go to b7. We should look briefly at what happens if white takes on e6, then rook c1 check, and rook c2. This is a very important tactical point here, as f2 is not coverable by any square, by any piece. f2 gets lost, and this is also close to a perpetual if black gets to take this with the rook. So rook takes e6 doesn't help. This is why he went rook b1. Now h5, securing the rook here, and white went h4. At this point, white could have thought about this move. The problem here is that this counterplay idea now just fails to checkmate. So the question is, what would have happened after? Oops, hit the wrong button there. What would have happened after this move? I think black is in serious trouble here. Not quite sure. He could try to cover this pawn. Then white can start to push the a pawn, and it's really questionable if black can hold this. Two rooks on the 7th are usually very, very good. So this rook b7 move would have been very important, I guess, and gave white quite serious winning chances. He played h4 though, preventing g5 and moves like this. And now king g8, very important move, because now what we see here, now white played this, check. And after check, rook c2, we have the mentioned counterplay on f2, and now check. This kind of move is no checkmate. This is a problem. With the king on f8 this was made, but here it's just nothing, even possibly bad for white. So in this position, check. White grabbed g7, check. And it ended up in a perpetual. One of either white or black are giving a perpetual on the second rank. So Magnus was in a bit of trouble in this game after he missed the clear draw here with rook a6, and here rook 1 to b7 would have been very critical for black. If white would have played this, very, very tough to defend. So a bit of luck here. Next game, I think Carlsen played Mamedyarov. This is what I already covered in the separate live video. So we can go straight to the fourth game of today. Carlsen playing black again, and he's playing Grandmaster Tkachev from France. Yeah, this guy is a bit infamous for this incident at the tournament in India where he showed up so drunk to a game that he actually fell off his chair. If I'm not mistaken, he really fell off his chair and they had to carry him out of the hall. I think if he's not completely drunk from the day before, he's a very strong grandmaster, 2,600 something, and he certainly gave his best here. Okay, knight f3, d5, d4, and we have a Slav defense, so he didn't want to go for this Queen's Gambit, declined again, and Tkachev also plays the Catalan, I think. Okay, we've got e3, bishop f5. This line we already saw yesterday with Magnus playing white, actually against Bodogan. But here Tkachev decides to capture on d5, which is not the main move. The main move is knight c3, e6, knight h4 and so on. But c takes d5 is also a possibility. C takes d5, queen b3. And this is a bit of a forgotten line. I actually played this myself a couple of times as white, and at first sight it looks really a bit strange, because you exchange on d5, you still have this somewhat bad bishop on c1. You don't have it on f4 like in the exchange Slav. But one point is this queen b3 simply attacks b7, and black needs to attend to this. He covered with queen c7, bishop d2, e6, check here, and now Magnus played knight b to d7, which is a bit of a rare move. It's not the main move. The main move here is knight c6, after which white can play, he doesn't need to, he can also castle, but white can play this move, and this is one idea of this kind of line with c takes d5, bishop d2. You want to get rid of this somewhat bad bishop here and hope to get to a position where at the end white would take on c6, and after b takes c6 he would pressurize black on this pawn. I'd show just one sample line, which is quite it's not good for black. Just show what white is after. He wants to have this kind of position, and this is arguably quite nice for white. Okay, so this didn't happen, as Magnus played on this check. He played knight b to d7, and I'm absolutely not sure what white should do now. I mean, I played this line, but I simply forgot what might be good here. White castled, and now a6. Note that this move, which looks quite nice at first sight, is answered by rook c1, and this pin here is quite annoying. This kind of stuff would be terrible for black. Okay, so bishop c2 is not a good move. a6, rook c1, gaining a tempo, and queen b6. Yeah, now white of course has to do something about this bishop. He retreated to e2. An alternative here would have been bishop d7. This kind of line. It's something that needs to be checked. White enters on the 7th, but black can play this simple move here, and now it's questionable what this really has accomplished. Bishop d6 is coming, and then the rook would need to retreat, so at the end this is most likely just better for black. So this is why he played bishop to e2. Yeah, Magnus exchanged here and played bishop to d6. So how to assess this position? Yeah, black certainly doesn't have any problems here, but it still looks fairly solid for white. He shouldn't be in huge trouble here. Knight c3 with the idea to, yeah, maybe this is a simple idea, using the pinner of the pawn, but one idea also could be to get a knight to c5, which would be nice. Of course, king e7 prevents any knight b5 tricks. And now he went knight to h4, threatening to take, so a retreat here, and knight a4. This was a bit surprising to me, to play this at this point. I was more expecting white to take and play h3, something like this. And now bishop to h5, which is quite an interesting move. White retreated, but what we should look at is what happens if, I mean, white doesn't really want to exchange, yeah, because it helps to have those bishops off, and white still suffers a bit from this this piece. It's still not terrible, but you really don't want to do that. I mean, white has moves like this here, and black is a bit tied down to this pawn. This isn't so so awful for white, but you don't want to play this, capturing on h5. So the question is, he played this, but what about this move? Here, black can actually think about this move, attacking the knight, and now maybe even gaining more space. White cannot go to e5, which is a real shame. Something like this here. Yeah, and this is a sort of position where it's maybe equal, but yeah, black has accomplished a little bit here, gaining some space on the king side and maybe a little bit to play for. So I think this is why he decided to just retreat the knight. But this is certainly nothing that black minded, threatening now to win a piece on d2 as the knight is pinned, so he needed to move the bishop. Yeah, and now b5, sort of asking white, okay, what is your knight doing there? You would like to go here, but it's, yeah, it simply blunders a pawn. So white at the end decided to retreat. And yeah, if you look at this, white simply made a couple of moves with his knights, knight h4, a4, and so on, and didn't really make any progress. While black has gained some space, he played b4 now. Yeah, knight all the way back to b1. Of course, you could think about this move, but the thing is, this knight doesn't have any square. It cannot retreat because of the pawn, and all this is very nicely covered. So you might face a pretty ugly position where this knight doesn't have a square. This is why he retreated. Here he at least has got the idea to activate the knight on d2. Okay, black covering the b4 pawn. Bishop b5. Yeah, he wanted to get rid of the pin also, I think. Rook c8, quite an interesting move. In this situation, oops, oh, this was bad. Hit the wrong button there. Oh, now I went all the way back. Sorry. Let's get to the position. Rook c8. White now played knight to d2. You also, of course, need to check this kind of line. which looks a bit crazy at first. For white, I mean, because this looks super ugly. But it continues. Rook a7, rook b1, rook d7, king f6, and now king f1, rook b2. Yeah, I think white might have calculated to this point, and it looks very scary. I checked this briefly with the computer, and it says that it gives the quite typical 0-0-0. So maybe this was what white should have played, but it's hard to imagine to go for this in a rapid game, because you can easily be lost if you miscalculate. So knight bd2 is normal, and still it's not so much happening. Black is comfortable, but it's not like white is white is close to lost or something. It's still a playable position. Exchanged now. Rook b8, bishop f1, bishop g6. So not much happening here really. f3, just the normal kind of moves to strengthen the position. This f3 move might prepare bishop g3 or also allow the king to participate. And now Magnus went e5, really showing that he is willing to try something in the position. One point is that if white takes here, bishop e5 is a bit annoying, as b2 is a weakness. White cannot really cover this pawn. He would need to try to drum up some counterplay with rook a6, c6 to a6, stuff like that, but nothing you really want to play. So white played bishop here. Black captured on d4. And now knight f8. This is a good maneuver. The knight on d7 really wasn't doing much, and he wants to bring it to e6, putting pressure on the d4 pawn. And this is a problem here for white. This d4 pawn cannot easily be defended with a knight, because the knight is in a really silly position here. His own pieces block all the possible squares, and this pawn is a cause for concern on d4. King f2, he wants to use the king to protect it. And now f5. Yeah, you see that black is constantly going for threats here, threatening f4, gaining some space. So white is under a little bit of pressure here. It's not like he's lost, but he always needs to defend. Check. Took. And f4, closing up the position. At first you would think, okay, this is a bad bishop, but this isn't the case at all, because it can go to h5 and control this very important f3 square, so that the knight cannot go to f3 without getting exchanged, and white also cannot go here, because it would simply blunder a pawn. So this bishop here is quite useful. Bishop d3, g6, just strengthening everything a bit. And now g5. Yeah, still keeping the pressure, playing active moves which force white to defend accurately. He took. And f4. This was the idea, this little tactical trick here. And now black actually has a choice. He took on g5, which is certainly an okay move. He also could have thought about taking on d4. Would be interesting. Let's say knight d2 to cover here, and then bishop g6. This also looks like black is somewhat better, because he's got a very nicely coordinated position. Knight and pawn prevent white's king from getting active, and this knight always attacks b3, so tying white down. This would have been a very serious alternative. He played Knight g5 though. Knight d2 covering e4. e6, you see the pressure. And how does white protect it now? He can't. He needs to take on h7. The problem is, as I mentioned, once you go here, black just captures and wins this pawn and even this one. So this I think is already losing. So yeah, white decided to give up the d4 pawn and capture h7. But now black is very active. The knight on d4 is super strong. And rook h8, trying to do something on the h-pawn. Yeah, a5 was hanging. So if you look at the whole kind of way how this game proceeded, you see that black always operated with small threats here and there and made a little bit of progress. Now he's got this pawn on the d-file and possible weaknesses to attack. White is still very solid, but he had to defend all the time. So very thankless task. h3, securing this pawn, and also knight g4 was a possibility. Rook c8. It's getting very concrete now with this rook c2 idea. Bishop e2. Yeah, wants to exchange some pieces to release some pressure. And the rook enters.
Check.
Was there some alternative? Yeah, white could have played maybe king e1. Yeah, it's just an ugly position. Black is pressing and pressing. If white would take here,
check. Check.
Maybe this kind of stuff. And this is also not fun to play. Note this neat little thing here. Nice mate. Okay. Yeah, white is constantly under pressure. So I have this checkmate issue again. If it's checkmate, somehow my back button doesn't work. Really cool. Not quite sure why. Okay, we're back in the main position here. I've somehow solved this issue. Not quite sure what's happening there. I needed to restart this whole thing. Okay, it doesn't like checkmates, this program. No idea what's happening. So I was looking at this move king e1, but in the game, I think maybe this is tougher than what was played in the game. In the game, Tkachev took on h5.
Check.
Rook d2. King moves and rook captured. Yeah, and now this d pawn is super strong. White protected b3. Yeah, and black's rook on the 7th is also not bad. Oh, here it's the second rank. Yeah, king e6. Both players down to 1 minute. Here black actually had a good alternative in a4, which is quite strong. The idea is if white takes here, then knight c4 is a very strong move with this idea. And also you've got the b pawn running. I think this is somewhat stronger than king e6, but it's easy to say after the game. Black still keeps a big advantage here. h5. And he runs over with the king to take care about the h-pawn. Yeah, now pushing the d-pawn. Yeah, white is is really lost here. This d pawn is just too strong in cooperation with the f pawn and the knight on e5. Yeah, I like to emphasize that bishops are stronger than knights. Very often this is really the case, but this is really a poor bishop and a monster knight on e5. Okay. Yeah. Very sorry piece here. White goes here, you can play here, and black just wins easily. Yeah, so one of those technical wins again. Black, let's say in this kind of position, being very slightly better, and he grinds on and on, setting problems for the opponent, and then it's a breakdown after a while. Okay, so a neat win, and yeah, the final game of this event was against Sergei Karyakin, who also is having a super great, outstanding tournament. He won also lots of games and was in the lead together with Carlsen, I think, before the round. Or they were very close, and you know, Magnus was on +6 already, winning 6 games and just drawing 3, I guess. Okay, so let's see what happened in this match of the two leaders of the tournament. e4, e5. We got the Berlin defense to the Ruy Lopez, but Magnus doesn't go for the main line or any other known line. He went d4, which is really uncommon. Black captured and castles. Yeah, this is really a very uncommon line. It could transpose into something which is known. Black now went a6, and if white would have played bishop a4 now, then we would have transposed to a quite rare Spanish sideline. Black going bishop e7 and yeah, e5 and so on. But he didn't do this. On a6 he simply captured on c6. D takes and knight takes. Yeah, and this is somewhat weird kind of exchange Ruy Lopez now, with black having a knight on f6, and white already has castled. Bishop c5, logical move, attacking the knight, and he protected it. Of course, black cannot really take on e4 because of this pinning move. Yeah, something like this. Loses a piece. So black went castles here. f3, protecting this now for good. Yeah, it's all pretty logical. Black trying to use the weakened light squares here with his knight. He covered it, and it's very standard kind of moves. King h1 to get out of this potentially dangerous diagonal. Bishop to d6, rook e1, c5. Yeah, you want to get rid of this knight, and of course white doesn't want to play a passive move here, so he went forward. Knight f5 and black needs to chop this, of course, and now attacks the pawn. So what now? Very aggressive play now. f4, pushing the knight back, and g4, securing the f5 pawn. Okay, he didn't have much choice, I guess, otherwise the pawn would be lost. But it's quite interesting to see that white now tries to maybe play on the g file, opening it up, and these pieces are not so great. But still black is fairly solid. I mean, I play e4, e5 as black, and this kind of position wouldn't scare me so much. Of course, the opponent would scare me, but the position seems still pretty solid. Yeah, knight to e4, centralizing the knight. White could grab here because of yeah, rook b8, and now black gets it back and has this active rook here on the second rank, so no good to take on b7. Knight e4 is much more logical anyway to centralize the piece. Queen d3 returns, queen b5, maybe putting some pressure also on b2, and g5. So a very complicated fighting position here. He grabbed, white took on f6, and black took on c3, and now we've got a really messy position. What you need to look at also is the time. Karjakin down to about 5 minutes. The clock times relayed here are not 100% accurate. They come close, but it's not 100% accurate. Carlsen on 10 minutes 30 seconds, so he really has got quite much more time left, which is certainly useful in this kind of complicated position. He took on g7, bishop takes, and rook g1 attacking here. So really a fighting position. King went to h8, getting out of the g-file, very understandable. And now he grabbed b7. There were alternatives here, but of course this is very hard to evaluate. Knight g4 was an idea, trying to use the knight. For instance, a move like here. Yeah, maybe he didn't want this to have black protect b7. It's very complicated. Rook c1 maybe. Where does the queen go now? If it goes here, you might have this idea. This is actually the idea of knight g4, to get to a position where this diagonal is open and white might be able to play something like this. I think it's not winning, but it's very dangerous. So knight g4 was a very serious alternative, but he decided to get one pawn back here and have material equality again. Knight d6, queen back. Yeah, black cannot take here because this is also hanging. Knight takes f5. Nice shot here. Wants to get this back. Oops. Bishop takes c5. Here white actually could have taken on f5. d4. And now knight e4 with the idea knight g5. Yeah, this is the computer line and not at all easy to see. The point is, if you go here, white has this move. If white would take,
check,
black has no problems at all and is even better. But the absolutely crazy computer tells me that this is actually winning for white. With this line. White is winning? What? Yeah, okay. It's a huge threat. This one and this one. Yeah, okay. Absolutely impossible to see. A fun line. So Magnus could have, to show this again, because this is a super crazy line, he could have taken here and played this. because on queen e1, knight g5 is winning. Yeah, okay. Absolutely impossible for a human to find. I mean, this is even in a tournament game with lots of time on the clock, close to impossible. Alright, so let's go back to human chess. White took on c5. Rook d8, attacking the queen. And still this is hanging here, so
check,
he took. If this one, oh, this is actually checkmate.
checkmate,
Now I have this checkmate error problem again. I shouldn't have shown the mate. Alright, I need to fix this and be back in a second. Oh, now it's working again. Fine. Really, really weird. Okay, so back to the game. You played rook d8.
check,
White took on e8 with check. Rook takes. And knight d3. Yeah. With the idea maybe to go here if possible. It's not easily done, but this is the general idea. And queen f6. So let's take stock here after very wild complications. It's 3 pawns each, yeah, material equality, and it's not obvious that white really has anything. What he's going for him is he's got about 1 minute more on the clock, and it's a bit more active with queen on d5, but it doesn't look really threatening. So let's see what happens. Rook g5, attacking the knight, and not being afraid of the back rank. What would happen if black gives a check here? I'm not sure what he played. I played rook d8, yeah, okay. If black gives a check here, you could actually just retreat the bishop and still attack this. Yeah, maybe this doesn't really bring much positive. Yeah. Okay, so he went rook d8, queen takes f5, rook d3. So again we arrived at an endgame which looks completely equal, but
check,
white is a bit more active here. He's got the rook on the 7th, better king, black's king is still here, and he's got the f-pawn. So, I mean, it should be a draw, right? But, well, play continues. And we'll see that white has some ways to
check,
make slight progress.
check, 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 check,
Alright, so I gave some moves here without any commentary. White made a slight advance here, the h-pawn, better king and so on, but black still is fairly solid. It's hard to imagine that he could actually lose this, but let's see what happens. King e8, rook a7, rook here, attacking the pawn, bishop g7. Yes. And these little kind of moves, yeah. Black takes now, king e6, and rook f8 checkmate. Very nice. So this little kind of threats, they really must be unnerving. Bishop g7, cannot take. Rook back, h6, and now white might try to get something on the h-pawn, like rook here, and capture it. King f7.
check,
It's not much happening really.
check,
And now Karjakin gave this check here. In this position, he was very, very low on time. in this position he could have played bishop f6, and this would have secured the draw. Let's say here.
Check.
And white cannot really make progress.
Check.
It's just checks all along, and if he goes over here, then a move like rook f6 just wins the f-pawn. This bishop f6, I guess he rejected. I mean, he was super low on time. Maybe he rejected it on account on this move. But here, king g6 is the saving move, and it's just absolutely nothing. The rook hangs. Need to move it, and this is just a draw. I mean, even a draw without the a-pawn, very easy one. So bishop f6 here would have drawn, but he played rook c4, king f5, and now the problem is, how do you save this pawn? And you don't get it back immediately like in the other line. One problem is white has got bishop e5.
Check.
And now, what are you doing?
Check. Check.
Yeah, and now the final shot.
Check.
Rook takes f8, check. And black resigned. If you go here, it's not this move because it's a pin, but you can play h7, and this pawn just promotes. If black sacrifices here, this kind of stuff, then you still got the e-pawn, and white just promotes to a new queen. Yeah, so why did white win this game? I mean, of course, black committed a blunder, yeah, a huge mistake with rook c4. But the thing is, white was keeping the pressure all the time. He always tried little things which irritated black, and he always needed to be careful. Look at the clock times: 1 minute and 30 seconds against 30 seconds, and he always kept trying to harass black here, and at the end he went down to, well, 2 seconds. You don't know if this is really the correct time, but black certainly was very low on time, and then he committed this mistake here, and this is completely understandable. It's not a lucky win or anything. He just kept the pressure on all the time, and yeah, at the end Karjakin here really couldn't stand this pressure at the end. Okay, so after the second day, with 10 rounds played, Carlsen is leading this tournament with a huge score with 8.5 out of 10, and this amounts to a rating performance. Okay, this is not ELO rated tournament, but because it's rapid, but his performance is above 3,000, so 3,000 performance. It's really amazing. Alright, so thanks for watching, and also have a look at this game he played against Mamedyarov, which I have made a separate video upon. Alright, yeah, I guess let's talk tomorrow again about this tournament when we have the third and final day. I think we can be yeah, pretty sure that Carlsen will win this thing with 1.5 points ahead, but still very interesting and very fighting chess to be expected. Yeah, thanks, and talk to you tomorrow.